Hi, I'm Danny. Today I'm going to explain a movie where a late-night train ride turns into a nightmare. A father, his son, and a few passengers realize their train won't stop, and someone might be behind it. This is Last Passenger, a thriller full of suspense, mystery, and survival. Let's get started. A train full of people travels at night from London to Tunbridge, Wales. The driver announces the next stops and asks everyone to have their tickets ready. Among the travelers is Dr. Lewis Sher, returning home with his young son Max. Lewis, tired, sleeps a little while Max plays. Lewis wakes up and notices they're still in London. Max suggests they play rock, paper, scissors. Lewis agrees but asks Max to sleep afterward. When they start playing, Lewis receives a call. The train is noisy, so he goes to the corridor. A colleague tells him there's been a major accident and they need him at the hospital. During the call, Lewis sees a friendly woman named Sarah, who organizes events, chatting with Max. While playing, Max spills her coffee on her coat. Lewis returns and apologizes to Sarah for the dirty coat, offering to pay for cleaning. Sarah jokes that he could buy her a new one, but then laughs and says it's nothing. Lewis and Sarah continue talking, getting along well. Max shows his drawings to Sarah, and she looks at them with interest. Then someone calls Sarah, and she becomes busy talking, something spicy as if it were for her boyfriend. Lewis awkwardly reads a newspaper borrowed from another passenger. Max notices a somewhat drunk man, Ian Kovsky, doing a trick with a disappearing cigarette. Scared by Ian's face, Max returns to his father. The driver comes to check tickets. Seeing Ian's cigarette, he asks him to throw it away. They argue, and everyone looks to see what will happen. Ian ends up throwing away the cigarette and leaving, saying he doesn't have a ticket. Max takes his toy and plays near the door. His father warns him it's dangerous, but Max doesn't listen. Suddenly, the door opens forcefully. Luckily, Lewis grabs Max just in time, preventing him from falling. Hey, what would you do if you were trapped inside a train that can't stop? The movie I'm going to summarize is called Last Passenger. It's a film that mixes action, mystery, and suspense. It's very good and kept me engaged from beginning to end, and the ending surprised me. I don't know about you, but I really like movies with cooler colors, giving that air of suspense. Before getting into the summary, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave a like to receive the best recaps. Frightened, Lewis yells at Max, takes away his toy, and tells him to stay quiet. After calming down, Lewis calmly explains that Max almost got hurt and asks him to be careful. The driver passes by to check tickets. He suggests putting the boy in the seat by the corridor for safety. Sarah says they should be more concerned about having locks on the doors. The driver asks if Sarah is Max's mother, and Max answers that his mother died. The train continues, and the compartments become emptier. At one stop, Lewis sees a strange man with a helmet get off and then return. Lewis and Max sleep for a while. During this time, someone attacks the driver. At the next stop, Lewis wakes up and sees that only he and Sarah are in the compartment. They talk more. Sarah tells him she broke up with her boyfriend and her friends threw a party in London to cheer her up. Lewis complains about his boring job. Sarah mentions the stain on her coat and accepts his cleaning offer. She uses this to give Lewis her phone number. She suggests he rest, promising to wake him before their stop, and puts on headphones to listen to music. After some time, Lewis wakes up with a sudden stop. Through the window, he sees a man with a bright vest and another injured person on the tracks. When the train starts moving again, Lewis tells Sarah he'll be right back and looks for the driver to report what he saw. In the corridor, he meets Ian, the passenger without a ticket, and discovers the driver's missing. Hearing a noise, another passenger, Peter Carmichael, comes out and asks what's happening. Lewis, concerned, explains that there's an injured person on the tracks who might have been run over and that he needs to notify the driver and the engineer. But Peter doesn't think it's urgent and suggests just calling an ambulance. Lewis does this and returns to Sarah and Max, who are playing. Finally, they get close to their stop and prepare to get off. Lewis asks another passenger, Elaine Middleton, if she's seen the engineer or the driver, but she says no. When they're about to say goodbye, Sarah kisses Lewis and reminds him that he has her number, but the train doesn't stop. Lewis leaves Max and Sarah in the compartment with Elaine and goes to look for the engineer. On the way, he calls a colleague, warning that he'll be late. He enters the driver's cabin, uses the radio to talk to the engineer and reminds him they missed a stop and mentions the person on the tracks. The engineer seems not to care, only asking how many passengers are still on the train. Lewis answers that there are 6, and the conversation ends. Rummaging through the driver's things, Lewis finds some keys and tries to open the back door of the train, but fails. Peter sees this and warns he'll call the police if Lewis continues causing problems. Irritated, Lewis explains that the engineer missed their stop. At that moment, they hear a very loud horn. Lewis returns to the compartment and tries to pull the emergency brake. Peter tries to stop him, but Lewis pushes him away. Peter realizes the train passed his stop too and pulls another emergency brake, but no brake works, and the train continues accelerating. Seeing that something is wrong, Lewis and Peter try to pull other emergency brakes, but none work. Ian joins them. Confused about what's happening, Lewis notices that the brakes have no pressure and thinks of the man in the orange vest he saw earlier might have tampered with them. Peter sees that Ian is wearing a similar vest under his jacket. Ian explains that he works cleaning the London Underground and swears he hasn't left the train or tampered with the brakes. He suggests that the same person controlling the train in place of the engineer remove the pressure from the brakes. The men are shocked by this idea. While Peter calls the transport police, Lewis remembers that this train can run in both directions, which means there might be a locomotive with functioning brakes at the back. Lewis tries to open the back door. Again, but the keys don't fit. Ian looks confused, asking why Lewis doesn't just go to the engineer. Peter appears in the corridor, saying not to mess with the door to avoid interfering with the police investigation. Ian ignores him and pulls the handle, which surprisingly isn't locked. The passengers go to the empty engineer's cabin at the back, while the train passes at high speed through the last station. Lewis tries to find the brake, but accidentally touches the horn, alerting whoever controls the train to where they are. They try all the levers, but they soon see they can't stop the train. Peter says to trust the police, who could cut the power to the tracks. But Lewis discovers that the train uses diesel, so it's not so easy to stop it. Then they see a handbrake that looks like a wheel, and he turns it, seemingly working. The train slows from 70 to 50 miles per hour, making a horrible noise and emitting sparks, and the passengers are relieved that it worked. But the person controlling the train accelerates again, reaching 100 miles per hour, and the rapid acceleration causes a fire. Peter tries again to stop Lewis and Ian, saying that what they're doing is against the law, but gets punched in the face. The passengers turn the wheel back, preventing the sparks from setting the train on fire. Returning to the corridor, Lewis tends to Peter's injuries while Elaine notices they're approaching a level crossing that someone operates manually. If the police don't do anything, they could hit a car and derail. Peter calls the police several times, hoping for help. Max realizes something is wrong, and Lewis explains the brake problems to him and teaches safety measures. The train goes at high speed toward the crossing, and all the passengers pray and hope for a miracle. But unfortunately, it didn't help. The train hits the car at high speed and continues moving, frightening the passengers. The police arrive too late and can't do anything. After the collision, Elaine feels ill. Lewis discovers she's having a heart attack and tries to revive her for about 10 minutes, but unfortunately can't save her. Finally, the passengers convince Lewis to leave Elaine and go to the engineer to try to force open the door again. Lewis and Ian try forcefully to break the first of the 2 doors of the cabin with a fire extinguisher and an axe, but it doesn't break. Eventually, Lewis manages to break the glass of the first door. Climbing up the corridor, he is horrified to find the driver strangled. Lewis knocks on the door, asking the engineer to open it and stop the train, but no one answers. He peeks through the dirty glass and sees a helmet in the cabin, the same one that the strange person who had left the train before and taken the engineer's place was wearing. Lewis tries to talk to the stranger, talking about his young son, but the stranger doesn't respond. With great anger, Lewis begins to hit the glass with the extinguisher and the axe, but the glass is very strong. Meanwhile, the stranger continues honking, telling Lewis to stop trying to enter the cabin. Ian suggests they calm down and think about what else they can do. The passengers return to their seats, and Peter says the police told him the man on the tracks was the real engineer, but Lewis insists that he saw this stranger on the train heading to London Bridge. He probably strangled the driver, pulled the emergency brake while the brakes were still working, and then removed the air from the brakes before entering the engineer's cabin. Suddenly, Peter remembers something similar that happened 30 years ago when a train arriving at a station, instead of slowing down, crashed at the end of the line. The engineer and 40 passengers die. Rumors circulated that the engineer caused the accident on purpose. It seems possible that the man with the helmet wants to kill himself in a similar way. After a while, Sarah finds a technical manual, hoping to find useful information. They still have 20 minutes until the end of the line. Irritated because no one is doing anything, Ian suggests starting a fire near the engineer's cabin to force him out. Peter warns that doing so could derail the train. Recalling another accident where the diesel tanks were damaged and all the passengers died in the fire that started, Sarah interrupts with information about the piece that connects the cars. Ian, who happens to be an engineer, explains how these pieces work. Sarah and Ian decide to try to separate the cars, connect the manual brakes from the back, and stop completely. The others support their plan. The piece that connects the cars turns out to be very difficult to reach, and Ian thinks about getting off the train to try to separate them. But Peter suggests waiting until they reach Kursk, where the train naturally slows down because of the bad tracks. Ian argues that the engineer might not slow down by his own will, but Peter assures that if he doesn't slow down, the train could overturn. Yes, the stranger wants to end it all, but overturning here wouldn't be as dramatic as crashing at the end of the line. Ian agrees with Peter, who suggests everyone have a drink before they reach Kursk and chat. A bit. Ian does his cigarette trick again, which cheers everyone up and prepares them for his mission. Finally, Ian risks himself outside, where the strong wind almost knocks him down. He reaches the piece that connects the cars but has difficulty separating them. Lewis sees Ian through the window, almost being carried away by the wind, and opens the door, extending his hand. Ian manages to hold on well when Sarah shouts that they're approaching a tunnel. Lewis manages to pull Ian back into the train just a second before they enter the tunnel. Ian wakes up with an arm out of place, but otherwise he's fine. Unexpectedly, the train stops in the middle of the tunnel. It seems the police decided to use sandbags to stop the train, but the hope of rescue diminishes when they discover that the tunnel only has one track and the door doesn't open completely. Lewis realizes that his son Max could pass through the opening, but Max begs, crying, not to be sent alone into the dark tunnel. Despite Lewis insisting on saving his son, the issue resolves itself when the train starts moving again. With only 10 minutes until the end of the line, Ian suggests blowing up the piece that connects the cars, but they don't have explosives. Then Lewis has an idea. He places a fire extinguisher between the luggage and the cars and ignites it, hoping it will explode. The passengers hide behind the seats, hoping it works. The explosion happens, but the piece that connects the cars holds. Approaching where it exploded, Lewis sees that now they can reach the piece from inside. He tries to separate the cars with his hands, but the hot metal doesn't allow it. Peter comes to help with a fire axe. Together, they manage to separate the car, but Peter loses his balance and falls into the opening onto the tracks. Ian and Sarah run to the manual brake, trying to slow down the train. Meanwhile, Lewis is in a car that's catching fire due to a fuel leak. Moments before a strong explosion, Lewis jumps out of the train. It's likely that the stranger who took the engineer's place doesn't survive the explosion, and Ian and Sarah manage to stop the train. Lewis faints. Lewis wakes up outside being carried by Sarah. Seeing the burning train nearby and police helicopters in the sky, Sarah says she's already called an ambulance, joking that he'll finally be able to get to the hospital on time. Ian jokes, saying that if he had paid for the ticket, he would ask for a refund. The surviving passengers celebrate the rescue, but no one knows who the mysterious engineer was. Why do you think the stranger with the helmet chose this specific way to die? Or perhaps you think he had other motives?